The night we never forgot. Growing up, my older sister and I spent most afternoons alone at home after school. Our parents both worked long hours, and we learned to manage ourselves. It wasn't a big deal, it was just the way things were. The house was familiar, predictable. We knew the rhythm of its creaks, the way the windows rattled slightly when the wind picked up, and the distinct groan of the old wooden floorboards under our feet. It never felt scary. Not until that night. It started out like any other evening. My sister and I were in our parents' bedroom, sprawled across the bed, watching TV. We weren't supposed to be there. Our parents had made that clear. But it was the coziest room in the house. The blankets were softer, the pillows fluffier, and the TV was bigger than the one in the living room. It felt safe. Outside, the night was still. The occasional sound of a distant car or a dog barking echoed faintly through the walls. But inside, everything was quiet until the TV went silent. The picture was still there, moving as usual, but the sound had vanished. No static, no distortion, just emptiness. I remember the way my sister and I turned to look at each other at the same time. It was an unspoken question, a shared moment of confusion. And then, in that eerie, unnatural silence, we heard it. The lock on the front door turned. Now, this wasn't a small, subtle sound that could be mistaken for something else. Our front door was old, made of thick, heavy wood, and the lock was just as ancient. It took effort to turn, and when it did, it made a loud, distinct click. It was unmistakable. We froze, barely breathing, as the sound of the door slowly creaking open filled the air. I felt a chill run down my spine. My sister sat up straighter, eyes wide, and whispered, "Did you hear that?" I nodded, barely able to get the words out. "Someone's home." That should have been a relief, except there were no other sounds, no familiar footsteps, no rustling of bags or jingling of keys, no tired sigh from Mom or Dad as they walked through the door. Just silence. The door closed. The soft but deliberate click of it shutting sent another wave of fear through me. My sister slid off the bed and tiptoed to the window, pressing her face against the glass. I could see her body tense. "There's no car," she whispered. A cold weight settled in my stomach. No car meant no parents. And if it wasn't them, then who had just come in? We barely had time to process that thought before another sound broke the silence. The staircase light turned on. The switch made a sharp, mechanical flick. The glow from the hallway spilled under the door like an unnatural, creeping presence. That was it. That was the moment when panic fully set in. My sister didn't hesitate. She moved quickly, shutting and locking the bedroom door. Her hands were shaking as she grabbed the landline phone from the nightstand and punched in the number of our uncle, who lived a few houses away. I stood motionless, ears straining to hear anything. Footsteps, breathing, movement. But there was nothing. Just the steady hum of the house around us. The call rang once, twice. My sister's voice came out in a hoarse whisper. "Someone's in the house." She barely finished the sentence before we heard a sound just outside the door. A faint but deliberate creak. Someone was standing there, listening. Terror gripped me so tightly I felt like I couldn't move. Couldn't think? My sister gripped my arm, her face pale, her breath coming in short, shallow gasps. Then, from outside the window, headlights. Relief flooded me as I realized it was our uncle's car pulling into the driveway. The beams of light cut through the darkness, and within moments, we heard heavy, hurried footsteps approaching the front door. Our uncle's voice boomed from the other side of the door. "It's me! Open up!" I had never felt so relieved in my life. My cousin was with him, and as soon as they stepped inside, they called out, "Where are you?" We practically ran out of the bedroom, our legs shaking, crashing into our cousin in the hallway. My uncle didn't waste time. He searched every single room, checking closets, under beds, even behind furniture. And yet, there was no one there. No signs of forced entry, no open doors, no windows unlocked, nothing. My parents arrived about 10 minutes later. My uncle told them what had happened, but they brushed it off. "You two probably imagined it," my dad said, shaking his head. "Maybe you were watching something scary, and your minds played tricks on you. But my sister and I knew. We heard the lock. We saw the stairway light turn on. We felt the presence of something, or someone, that was never found. Even now, years later, we still talk about that night. The way the air felt heavy with something unexplainable. The way the door had clearly been unlocked and opened. The way the staircase light had turned on by itself. I don't know what happened that night. I don't know who or what was inside our house. But I do know this. I never slept with the bedroom door unlocked again. And even now, as I sit in my own home, my parents fast asleep in their rooms, I hear faint footsteps above me. Probably just the neighbors. Right? P.S. Be careful reading stories like this alone. Sometimes the things you dismiss as imagination aren't.